Zoro and Law are two leaders from OPO1 that are still very much relevant in the metagame, even in Asia, who's rapidly approaching OPO5 while we're still in OPO3. And it doesn't matter whether it was the first set, second set, third set, or the fourth set that Asia's in right now, Zoro and Law are always decks that have been powerful. The thing is, when Bandai printed these two cards, I don't think that they realized how powerful they were really going to be. Zoro and Law both have abilities that are very generic. And now, of course, you could say, hey, Ryan, there's other leaders that have very generic effects, kind of like Event Call from OPO2, where you just have to be able to have 0 cards in your hand and you could draw 2 cards. Well, the thing is with Zoro and Law is that their abilities are extremely game warping. Let's talk about it real quick. So Zoro, one simple line of text with 1 Dawn attached, all of your characters gain 1,000 power. We all know how powerful that is. Just imagine being able to play 1 Dawn on each and every single one of your characters for the cost of only 1 Dawn, right? You have 5 characters and you can play 1 Dawn on all of them for the cost of 1 Dawn instead. It's absolutely powerful and it breaks the system of Dawn, the thing that the game is balanced around. Then you take a look at Trafalgar Law, who I have always said from the very beginning breaks One Piece TCG. And as long as Law exists in its current state, whenever really good red cards are printed or whenever really good green cards are printed, he will be relevant. Even if cards are not printed, if those cards aren't going to get hit, the deck will still be great. Now, why is that? Well, he breaks the rules of the game by allowing you to cheat out a 5 cost character for the cost of 2 Dawn, essentially making it 3 Dawn efficient. It is very powerful. Now, of course, you can combo this with the effect of 5 cost Law, also from OPO1 as well, and all of a sudden you got the true Room Shambles shenanigans. The thing is with Trafalgar Law is it just has to be a different color than the color of the card that you're bouncing back. So obviously red and green, red can bounce back to green, green can bounce back to red, right? So as long as you meet those 2 conditions and you have 2 Dawn available, you can go ahead and bounce back a 1 cost card and have a 5 cost card standing at the ready. These 2 leaders are very generic and game warping in their abilities, and because of that, these 2 leaders will always find some relevance in play until multiple cards are hit on the ban or restricted list, or if these cards are errata themselves. In fact, more recently with Zoro, 3 cards were added to the list, as we all know. Edward Noongate 9 costs, as well as 2 other cards, Marco and Radical Beam. Versions of Zoro have ran all 3 of these, or maybe just a couple of these, or maybe even just one of them at max copies. Different Zoro players like different things. The craziest thing about all of it is even though all 3 of the new cards on the restricted list are all red and all could have been ran in Zoro, same thing with Law, although a lot of Laws weren't playing 4 cost Marco or the 9 cost Beard, so let's not really talk about that. Let's focus on Zoro. Although all 3 of these cards are technically Zoro hits as clearly outlined by Bandai themselves on their website, Zoro is still going to be very powerful and probably the best deck, if not in contention for the best deck with Law. In my opinion, I think Trafalgar Law is the best deck in the format personally, but I think Zoro is also very powerful, especially because he can run cards like Fire Fist, which allows him to really make Law have a rough day. But if Zoro doesn't see that Fire Fist, then, Law is able to pop off. And of course, again, Zoro being generic, he can play things like Buggy, who will then allow him to be able to get Fire Fist, and Buggy can't be killed by Slash, which Law players have a lot of Slash of in their deck. But then you have Buggy as well, that you could easily pump up with 1k. Now he's 4k, attach 1 Dawn, he's 5k. You guys see where I'm going with this. Now, for me, the biggest thing that I see with Bandai now is the fact that because they've printed these cards the way that they are, and it seems like they don't want to errata things or go back on things, the way that they print cards is changed dramatically. And by that, I mean we are now going to enter the age of being locked into types. We've already seen this a lot in OPO4, and we are now seeing a lot in OPO3, where leader abilities are going to be tied more so into types if they seem powerful. For example, anybody could tell you Zoro's ability is powerful. And when you compare it to Bello Betty from OPO5, well, let's just go ahead and read her ability. So once per turn, activate during your main, you could discard one Revolutionary Army type card from your hand and give up to 3 of your Revolutionary Army or trigger type cards plus 3,000 power for the turn. Now, of course, this is going to lock you into playing Revolutionary Army or trigger type cards. Very specific archetype, right? What if Bello Betty essentially just said discard one card and give 3 of your characters plus 3,000 power? That would just be absolutely insane, and it's almost ridiculous to even think of course, but then you wonder, why can Zoro give everybody 1,000 power for one Dawn, right? So it's things like that where now, of course, these powerful effects will be printed, but they are going to be locked behind types. Of course, there are still going to be leaders that have more generic abilities that don't have types or need types. For example, the new Akainu, the new Sakazuki, who says you may discard one card, draw one card, and when you attack, you can give your opponent -1 cost. Of course, there's going to be effects like that, but again, you have to think about what colors and what powerful cards that those colors have compared to red and what it can potentially do. They've made red such an OP color with all the cards that have been released that going forward, the way that they print cards is going to have to be extremely specific. When it comes to green specifically, right, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to pull cards that are going to be 5 costs or lower that are also not tied into an archetype because it can be potentially abused by Trafalgar Law. If that's the case, then Trafalgar Law is going to be able to pop off. The more 1 or 2 cost red and green cards that are released, Law can potentially play them. It doesn't matter. If they're 1 or 2 costs, the Law can potentially use it and abuse it and play a 5 cost, play his 5 cost blocker, bounce it back up, play restand Law, do all of those shenanigans. It'll always just be so powerful. You're playing essentially in optimal turns with way more than 10 Dawn, if you really break it down and think about it. So you look at another card like Emporio and Vaikov, who seems really cool, but once again, locked into Revolution Army. You take a look at some of the Alabasta cards in OP04, and once again, these cards are going to be locked behind Alabasta, or they're going to lower the power of the leader, something that you definitely don't want to do when you're playing Zoro. Going forward, Bandai is going to have to do this, unless they errata Law or Zoro. This is commonplace now, guys. Types are going to be, this is what it is. And, you know, it's fun that there's going to be more archetype focus in terms of deck building and things like that. It makes it a lot easier for deck building in some aspects. But with that being said, I do like the free flow nature that are leaders in One Piece with it having generic abilities, right? Like it does feel really good when you can just take your leader like Crocodile and be able to play him through all formats and just be able to continue to build on your deck with each little addition, right? Getting access to Albuquerque Fist, then after Albuquerque Fist, I know it's not called that, but that's what we call it on this channel. You get access to 3,000 Worlds. Now we have access to Red Rock, and it just keeps getting better and better, and you can slowly get all these different pieces and still play with your old leaders. I really like that. But unfortunately, specifically for red, and Law is red and green, so technically he's also a red leader. For red specifically, Bandai is going to have to be careful with how they print their cards. With that being said, do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.